Hey friends, welcome. If this is your first time visiting, welcome. If you're returning, welcome back. Thank you so much for stopping in. So today we are just going to do some beading. I'm not even going to talk about the beading. We're going to do some beading. I'm going to work on another wristlet. This is the one we did last time. So I have several of them that I have to do. And these are wristlets for your cell phone. And we're not even going to talk about the beading. We're going to talk about today, we're just going to continue our conversation because when we left off, we were talking about anxiety. And I wanted to come back to anxiety, and I wanted to kind of talk about a difference between anxiety and stress. So I am a psychiatric nurse practitioner. I have been a nurse for well over 30 years. I spent 30 years in the emergency department before becoming a psychiatric nurse practitioner. And the emergency department certainly includes psychiatric patients and patients going through emotional stress by all means. So I just wanted to talk about the difference between anxiety and stress because sometimes it's easy to get the two mixed up, and the way to handle each one of them is different, right? So anxiety and stress, they both kind of feel very similar to each other, but in reality, they're two completely separate things. They can both make your heart race, and they both make your chest feel tight, and in the middle of a very busy life, the two can definitely blend together. However, they are definitely not the same. Understanding the differences can actually allow you to take your power back. So let's just kind of take a minute and talk about it. So the thing about stress is that stress is usually tied to something super specific, right? So a deadline, running late, a phone call that you weren't expecting, medical appointments, bills, like family things, all that kind of stuff. And when we face something stressful, the body goes into what we call fight or flight mode. So, that mode is a response because our body thinks that we are pulling the fire alarm. And it's not because you're in danger, but it's because your brain thinks that you need extra energy in order to get something done. When you're going through a stressful period, there are two chemicals that kick in. You have adrenaline and cortisol. Adrenaline is instant, so it's a jolt. It gives you an immediate burst of energy. It makes it so that you are ready to run, hide, fight, whatever you need to do. And then cortisol is slower. It keeps you alert, it keeps you focused, but it also keeps you on edge, and that's how it keeps you ready, and that's its job. So, stress is a very normal human response. Stress isn't all bad, right? So, stress starts to become bad when it sticks around, right? So, short-term stress can actually help you focus. It helps you get things done. It helps you stay sharp during important tasks. The problem is that when it starts to pile up and it doesn't get a chance to turn off the alarm. And that's kind of when stress starts to feel like anxiety. Anxiety is different. Anxiety is something that happens inside you, right? And it happens when things around you are calm. It kind of happens in the quiet, and it's like this, I always describe it as like this little humming worry. Now, of course, a panic attack is full on. You know when that happens, right? But anxiety itself is sort of like this little kind of worry, this little humming that just sort of sits with you. Anxiety is like a feeling that something is wrong, even when there's nothing going on, right? You feel like everything's going great and you still feel like something's wrong. The other shoe is just gonna drop at any time. So one of the ways I describe anxiety is the brain is trying to help you and keep you safe, but it's trying a little too hard. It's a little overzealous in what it thinks it wants to do for you. Instead of waiting for a stressful event, it's trying to predict it, or it imagines it. It even kind of like rehearses it. It's but what if, right? The what if scenario. So in the brain, anxiety is tied to the amygdala. And so the amygdala is kind of like your brain's smoke detector. And sometimes anxiety can make that amygdala overly sensitive, and so it goes off even when there's nothing going on. And my dear sweet friends, let me tell you, that does not mean that there is something wrong with you. It is honestly extremely normal. And it just simply means that your nervous system needs rest. We carry a lot, and especially in this day and time, we all carry so much. And sometimes your amygdala just needs a little rest. Sometimes it needs reassurance, and it just needs you to be gentle to yourself. Every time I talk about this with people, I think about this patient. So, I've been in the emergency department for a long time. So there's a lot of patients that stick with me, right? But this was a little bit different because this was such a normal, average patient, and the normalcy to it is what really made it stick to me. So this beautiful young woman came in, and she was so worried. She was having tightness in her chest. She was having a hard time breathing, and she was really sure that she was having a heart attack. She was so sweet. I can still... Listen, this has stuck with me for so long. It has probably been 20 years or close to it. And since then, I've had a lot of patients like her, but this is just the one that stuck with me. And so we ran all of her testing, and everything came back fine. She was absolutely fine. It was anxiety. You know, she, throughout the time, her and I were talking, and, you know, she had just been going through a lot, dealing with, you know, just family and work and children. And, you know, like many of us women, she had a partner, and but she was still just carrying the weight of everything all by herself. And it was so much, you know, it was near the holidays, and it just made her feel like, you know, her burdens were really just so heavy. And the thing that was very interesting is that the anxiety attack happened after her mom came into town. And her mom is a very safe space for her. And her mom came into town and realized how much she was doing. And so her mom started taking some of the load off of her and helping her get stuff done. And the thing I remember about her is her saying to me, like, why now? If it is anxiety, I don't understand why now. And my answer to her is very simple, because now your body felt safe to let you know how it's feeling. Because before, when you were doing all the stuff, your body knew you had all this to do, right? And so now that that's all quiet, your body feels safe to let you know what's going on. So her mom came and took over some of the burden, and suddenly her body feels safe. And the reason that she stuck with me, so at the time I was a single mom. You know, my daughter's grown now, I have grandchildren. But at the time I was a single mom, I was an ER nurse, and, you know, and I just recognized that she is most of us, right? Like, she just represented the majority of us. We're doing so much and we're carrying so much load, and that's where the absolutely average encounter was something that just really stuck with me, because that was that first moment that it just really sat with me, how much we carry on a regular basis. And that was it. As soon as she was able to set down that load a little bit, that is when her body was like, okay, I need to tell you something. And that's kind of how it happened. Your body finally gets to the point where it feels safe enough to let you know what's going on. And there it goes. Or sometimes the body just can't take anymore, and it has to let you know. And that's sometimes when it can turn into a panic attack. You know, even thinking from my own life, you know, pretty recent, right? You know, I've gone through a season where everything looked really normal on the outside, but inside, my nervous system was absolutely exhausted, and nobody knew. I mean, honestly, some of you that have been with me watched me go through it, and my family watched me go through it, and none of them knew, because we keep so much of that to ourselves. And I went through it all by myself with no one to lean on for a good year before I finally said, you know what, okay, I can't do this by myself, and I'm gonna start letting people in. So, you know, it's very common, and it happens to all of us at some point in our lives. And, you know, for me, it was those quiet moments, you know, especially driving, because I drove a long way, well, I still do, for work. And, you know, and I also do a long drive to see my grandkids on a regular basis. So that was really the biggest time for me, because that is when everything was quiet and still, and, you know, and that's really when I would start feeling it, you know. I'd feel the anxiety creep up, and, you know, I had to go through those, I had to use, you know, different tools that I happen to have in my toolbox to kind of help myself feel safe and get through it. You know, just know that it is very normal that in the quiet moments, you know, that's when we really feel the anxiety the loudest. So one way to think about it is that stress lives in your schedule, and anxiety lives in your mind and your body. And when I was able to understand that is when my entire approach to life changed, is being able to recognize those two. Because once you understand that, then you can do something about it. And that's the most important piece. You know, I think about, like, have you ever, like, just been sitting around, and then all of a sudden your heart starts racing, and you realize that it is about something that hasn't even happened? And that is so common with anxiety, because stress is going on, it's happening, and anxiety is you worrying about pieces and parts of things that haven't even happened. And that's what our mind does to us, you know. It's very common. And again, you know, anxiety doesn't mean you're failing. Anxiety means that you're tired, that you need to rest. So how do we tell the difference, right? So, you know, like I said, stress is in your schedule. Anxiety is in your thinking and your body. So it's in your mind and it's in your body, right? So stress is about something, and anxiety is there even when that something's over. And a lot of times anxiety shows up as what ifs about that something. So say someone that you love had a medical diagnosis, right? And so stress is dealing with that, doing all the things, right? And then anxiety creeps up after, you know, everything is over. You know, you might have anxiety in there because the what ifs. What if something bad happens to them? What if they can't this or they can't that, right? But then anxiety will linger. So even when that stress piece is over, they're better, everything is good, that anxiety is that lingering, well, what if it comes back? What if this happens now? What if this person gets that, right? So that is anxiety. Anxiety lingers, right? When the situation ends, stress ends. But anxiety follows you and continues into the quiet. And the reason this is important, because those two things respond differently in order to take care of them, right? So stress responds to problem solving, right? So when something is about stress, it is something that you can solve a problem and take care of, right? Your bills are astronomical. I can get another job, work harder, work overtime, pay the stuff, right? So stress responds to action. You can do things, right? Problem solving. Anxiety, on the other hand, responds to comfort, grounding, and safety. Because remember, with anxiety, the problem is not actually going on. And that's where understanding those two different scenarios, it's life-changing, because it allows you can stop and say, okay, what is going on here? Is it stress? Is it anxiety? And from there, you can put the pieces in motion to help yourself feel better, right? So if it's stress, you are going to move into action. You're going to problem solve to fix that. If it's anxiety, you're going to move into comfort. You're going to move into grounding. You're going to move into safety. So what does that look like, though, right? How do you do that? So the biggest thing, one of the big takeaways for this is when you calm the brain, you calm the body. So our biggest player when it comes to this is the vagus nerve. So your vagus nerve runs from your brainstem and it goes down through your chest and your abdomen. And some of the things that you can do to calm a vagus nerve is slow breathing. So on our last video, we talked about breathing. So smelling the roses and blowing out the candle. And so there's this technique, and it's the 4-7-8 technique, right? And I personally think that smelling the roses, blowing out the candle is an easier way to remember, right? But it's basically, breathing in for 4 seconds, holding it for 7, breathing out for 8. So, and this is something that you can do with somebody, right? So if somebody is hyperventilating, and I actually also have used this on patients that are having a heart attack or with COPD, when I want them to utilize less oxygen consumption, but this works really well. So it's 4-7-8, but smell the roses, blow out the candle. So you're going to smell your roses with a nice deep breath. And you're going to hold that smell. And then you're going to blow that breath out, but you're going to blow out the candle. And you don't want the wax to go all over. So you're going to blow it out slowly and steady. So you're going to breathe the roses. And you're going to blow out the candle. And this is one of the most calming breaths, and it really does work. It works so well. And then other things that you could do for the vagus nerve would be humming, right? Like humming actually really helps the vagus nerve to calm down, as well as singing. However, listen, it's bad enough that I hum for you. You do not want me singing for you. So, But if I was by myself and I needed to sing, I would sing. And you think about, like, when you're singing, how calming it feels and how good it feels, because it actually helps to calm down your vagus nerve. And then also, everybody is different, I know, on this one, but for me, I very much, am a believer in God, and I am a believer in prayer. So praying is another way that really helps to calm your vagus nerve. It's been shown that prayer, when you're praying, your vagus nerve just calms itself down. And for me, I pray, I give everything to God and move on. And I know that that is not everybody's thing, but that is definitely my thing. And if that is your thing, prayer really helps to calm your vagus nerve. So it's a great tool to utilize. And then also just gentle stretching, just stretching things out. Another good way to calm the vagus nerve. So these are all good ways when you start feeling keyed up and anxious. Just doing these things help calm that vagus nerve. By doing these things, you're kind of like sending a message to the vagus nerve that, hey, you're safe now. And when the vagus nerve calms down, then the amygdala, which is that fear center, it also starts to quiet down. Your heart starts to slow, your muscles will relax, and your mind softens. So we talked about breathing, right? So that 4-7-8 breathing, which the roses and the candle, super important, stretching out for that vagus nerve. But there's some other just easy to use tools that really do help. So on my last video, we talked about the 5-4-3-2-1 grounding. So I'm not going to go all the way back through, but again, the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, 1 thing you can taste, and making a point to, so when you're doing them, you have to actually say it out loud. And if you're not smelling something, you think about something you can smell, but you do it and you say it out loud as you're doing it, right? And you're grounding yourself. And doing this, as simple as it sounds, it helps to remind the body that you are here, you're present, you're safe. All like just easy to do and super important, and they're little tools that actually work. And then another thing that I like that works well is body scanning. So you start at your feet and like feel each part of your body. You start at your feet and you go up, and you think about like what is tight and what is tough, right? And anything that feels tight, you relax it, make yourself relax it, and you go all the way up. A lot of times your jaw, like, when you start to get tense, your jaw gets tense and you don't even realize how tight. Like, I see people that like they come in with like pain in their jaw from tensing up so much, and they don't even realize that they're doing it, right? So just tensing, just untensing all those pieces. And it's a body scan, and you start at your feet and you go all the way up to each part of your body, and you let yourself feel it, and you got to think about it. The important part of these things are you think about each of the things that you're doing. You make your mind go to the here and now and think about each piece as you're doing it. And then another thing that I like is micro pauses. So during the day, you take just multiple times during the day, you take like 10 seconds and you pause and you force your brain to just relax and not think about anything, and just push it out and just give your brain space to relax. For me personally, when I can't relax my brain, then I will do a little 10-second prayer. And it's just micro pauses, and just doing that through the day, micro pauses. It allows yourself to, those micro pauses allow your brain just that minute, that small little moment to reset. And then also doing things like crafting. So the reason why I do this crafting, and the reason why I have the channel, right? So am I the world's best crafter? Absolutely not. I come up with some fun stuff though, but I do it because this is a stress relief for me. And then being on YouTube, so can you imagine spending 30 years in the emergency department. Everything about your job is crisis. So 12-hour shifts, I have always worked about 5 days a week, easy. 12-hour shifts of nothing but crisis. There are not many people that can say they've spent 30 years in the emergency department. And, you know, for me, everything in my job has been about crisis. So being on YouTube and crafting, it allows me to spend time and do things with people and strangers, right? Because most of my job is about strangers, and it allows me to do things that are not based on chaos. And that is my way of allowing my brain to just relax and be okay, and putting something different into my brain other than chaos. So, and that's why it doesn't matter to me, like, anyone who's been watching me, you know that I am not your typical person on YouTube, just always, you know, trying to do all these different things to get, you know, just goofy stuff to get views. Half the time I forget to even tell people to subscribe. So subscribe. But, you know, for me, it doesn't matter if it's 5 people or 100 people. For me, it is about the act of doing it. It soothes my brain because I've spent my life taking care of people in crisis. And now in psychiatry, I still do the same thing, you know? So, you know, and then crafting, like sitting here and just doing beads, you know, putting epoxy on stuff, like doing things like this. The brain loves predictable, repetitive things. So doing stuff like this, I have done crafting my entire adult life, you know, and I do it because it makes my brain feel good. Not because I am some amazingly creative person. I do it because it makes my brain feel good and I enjoy it. But, you know, being creative and making things and doing that repetitive stuff, so doing puzzles, the diamond art, all that kind of stuff, it helps the brain to reset, because again, the brain loves repetition and it loves predictability. Makes the brain feel good. And, you know, it's all about making our brain feel good. And, you know, doing stuff like this, it decreases your cortisol and it helps to calm down your nervous system. Super important. So it is very healthy for you to do things that you enjoy doing and giving your mind something different to focus on. So I'm about to finish up this bracelet and I'll show you when I'm done. I'm almost done, but I hope that this was comforting for you. Stress and anxiety can be very overwhelming, but you know, the first part of taking care of it is recognizing it and understanding the difference. And that's why, as simple as it is, I just really thought that this was an important thing for us to talk about, because you know, the two blend together, and a lot of times it really is hard to know what it is, if it's stress or if it's anxiety. And at the end of the day, if you are going through a period of a lot of anxiety, it is important that you know that you are not broken. It is just your body's way of trying to help you deal with the things that you are dealing with. And just remember, remember those tools that you have in your toolbox: the breathing, the grounding, the body scanning, right? Doing those things to relax your nervous system, and taking that moment for yourself, doing things that you love: crafting, reading, whatever it is that makes you happy and allows you to enjoy a moment, because it's very important. So this particular wristlet I am making for my friend. I'm gonna stick it with her birthday present that I bought her, and her birthday's tomorrow, but her favorite color is yellow. But the reason why I chose this that I'm doing, and I'll show you when it's all done, and I really, really hope that she likes it, but her mom died in January, so this January will now be 2 years since her mom died. And her mom's favorite flowers were sunflowers, and so her mom was diagnosed in November with cancer and then died in January. It was very quick. And she had a sunflower that was given to her by her grandson, which is my friend's son. And it was still a very fresh sunflower, and she had kept it with her. And so it is what they put in the casket with her. So I thought that this, since she loves yellow, and since sunflowers were her mom's favorite, I just thought that this would be very fitting for her. Oh, and I closed the ring, and I forgot to put it on the thing before I close it. This is what happens when I talk. I hope I didn't make this ring too weak. Well, listen, as we finish up, I just want to thank you so much for being here with me today, and I hope that it was helpful. And I just hope that you know that you are not alone. And I hope that, maybe some of these tools will be useful for you. All right, so let's see if you can see. So there's this little gnome with sunflowers, and then I got a sunflower here. And then, so what happens is I have this little piece that goes, so it goes in the phone like this, and it lays flat. So I'm gonna make a leather yellow one for this particular one, but I'm gonna do this just to show you what it looks like. So then you have your little wristlet, and your wrist goes in, and you can hold your phone. And she's got this little sunflower gnomey on there. So I think he's super cute. I hope you guys like it, and thank you for spending this time with me. I hope you have a blessed and beautiful day, and I'll see you later. Bye, friends.